It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program, hour number 2 here. And you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here, so we really appreciate you being with us. Hey, welcome back to the program. It's Tuesday, and that means it's time for Mr. Josh Waters to interview again about the Conduit Weekly Scorecard. Josh, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Paul. How's it going?
It's going good. We're in week 4, and I can't even believe we're already in week number 4. But, we've had now 3 weeks of bills that have been on the Conduit Scorecard, and so now we've got to get to some new ones here. And I think these are pretty interesting bills to watch. Let's go ahead, Josh, if you don't mind going over some of these with us. We're going to start with SB 231. It's up right now at conduitnews.com if you want to check it out. Expanding Freedom of Information Law. Tell us about this by Senator Kim Hammer.
Yeah, so it's a short bill, 1 page, but it does a lot. It would basically extend the Freedom of Information Law to any private entities that spend at least 20% of their time or resources towards a government function. So where this would really come into play, Paul, is when, lately government entities have been setting up nonprofits, and then those nonprofits, since they're not technically a government agency, they're shielded under the Freedom of Information Act, so people can't find out what, that, quasi-governmental entity is doing with taxpayer money.
Wow. To me, this is almost like an ethics reform in a way. Because I think what it's doing is bringing to light a problem that a lot of people don't even know exists.
Yeah, when we talk about ethics, I think that the forefront of that should be more transparency, and I think this bill and the Freedom of Information Law in general, providing more transparency is really the answer, shining a light on what's going on, what is being done with taxpayer money, regardless of they set up a private organization. Sometimes it might be to try to shield themselves from the Freedom of Information Act. So this bill is straightforward. It's 20% of time, resources, or efforts are in support of a government entity. Then that entity would then be subject to the Freedom of Information Law.
Wow. Yeah, and this is nuts to me. I think there's a lot of people that didn't realize that governments, and it says right here, governments sometimes set up private entities to carry on taxpayer-funded functions. These private entities are then exempt from the Freedom of Information Act, keeping taxpayers in the dark. I think a lot of people don't even know that that's what happens. A lot of people would ask why it happens. I'm sure there's people that could say, there are legitimate reasons to do so. Okay, so if you're going to do it, let's make sure that we have a way of seeing what you're doing with taxpayer money. This is a great bill here by Senator Kim Hammer.
Yeah, like you said, Paul, if it's going to happen and there's avenues to do it, maybe that's fine and okay, but just let people know and be able to get information about what government's doing. I think that transparency adds a layer of accountability, obviously, for these organizations. So I think it's a really good bill.
All right, let's go now to, so this is another bill, HB, it's a House Bill 1284, Advanced Practice Nurse as Primary Care Provider for Medicaid. Let's talk about this by State Representative Justin Gonzalez.
Yeah, another, very straightforward bill. A lot of times titles of bills don't always do what they say or exactly what they say, but, the title of this bill is very straightforward. It does what it says. An advanced practice nurse could be a primary care provider under the Arkansas Medicaid system. So the big thing here is it's going to be savings for the taxpayer within the Medicaid system. If an advanced practice nurse can charge a reimbursement rate for to Medicaid to be reimbursed at a lower cost than a licensed physician, so that's going to be savings while still maintaining a good standard of care. One thing under this bill, the reimbursement rates for like lab tests or x-rays, that kind of pretty much stays the same. But as far as like doctor's visits, if you visit this APN now, they can be a primary care provider and under the Arkansas Medicaid system, saving taxpayers money who pay for that Medicaid program.
Yeah, and I see here, if you go to conduitnews.com, where the write-up on this Week 4 scorecard is, on this particular bill, you link to an interview that I did with Dr. David Mitchell from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, and also you link to his op-ed, Better Healthcare, Empower Nurse Practitioners. You know, this whole situation, if you look into it, the facts are, I believe, on the side of this bill to get it through, because it's really common sense. And, you know, again, it comes down to, we're talking about choice yesterday, school choice. More choices, giving patients more choices is a good thing, not a bad thing, particularly if you're just allowing somebody to practice how they've been trained to practice. It's common sense, and these, you know, these regulatory reforms are going to be so good for the patients.
Yeah, you know, and that, you know, this bill doesn't even really address scope of practice, because APNs can only do what's necessary as a primary care provider. And so this would also be good for rural areas, maybe that can't get a licensed doctor to move in or set up an office in some of these rural areas, but maybe an APN is already there or nearby. And
so this is really, I mean, because this has to do with Medicaid. This is about saving taxpayer money, is what this is about. Yeah. The taxpayers pay for this program, and this is a way to make it more efficient while maintaining standard of care, and should save taxpayer money. That's great. Okay, moving on. We're talking with Mr. Josh Waters. We're going over week number 4 Conduit scorecard. Let's go to another bill. It's House Bill 1412, No Taxpayer Money for Teacher Union/Groups, by State Representative John Eubanks. This is the second bill, I think, from State Representative John Eubanks that's made the scorecard and has been a support bill. So tell us about this, Josh.
Yeah, so again, a straightforward bill. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but again, straightforward bill, and would say no public funds, so taxpayer money, to go to pay the dues for these professional organizations that teachers and employees of schools may be involved in. And so I heard your interview yesterday with Lori Lee, and that's, you know, a big thing right now is the dues and stuff that are being used towards these very, very powerful lobbyist groups, government lobbyist groups. And so this bill would just say, hey, no taxpayer money can be used for these groups. It does clarify that if teachers want to use their own money, their own salaries, they could do that and have it deducted. But as far as any, taxpayer money, it couldn't be, when the school gets the money, it couldn't be just, okay, we're going to earmark a percentage of that for dues for our teachers in the whatever association.
And Josh, this is necessary because I know you personally have reflected on the state of lobbying in Little Rock. For example, in our in the Conduit News 2017 impression of the session, where we compiled kind of all of these interviews from legislators as they reflected on what was passed in 2017. You seem to indicate one of your biggest discoveries down there was that government itself is represented almost more than the private sector. It's like the biggest lobby group down there is government itself.
Oh, absolutely, and that it would be great to see a bill, Paul, that said, "Hey, no taxpayer money can be used to pay for dues for any of these groups." You can't have taxpayer money pay for government lobbying, because at the end of the day, they're all lobbying, almost universally for bigger government. So when you go into these rooms, you see it, Paul. It's almost entirely filled, not with concerned citizens, but with either a special interest represented. But a lot of times, that room is half or more government, some type of government employee or legislative liaison, or I don't even know I can't keep up with the titles anymore. I know legislative liaison is a title that a lot of agencies are using more and more, and so that's what we're seeing is a lot of government paid lobbyists that are lobbying for more government.
Yeah, using the word liaison, I'm just going to say it. It sounds like you're a spy. It sounds like you're it sounds something wrong about using the word liaison. It just sounds like cloak and dagger type stuff to me. But that's just my opinion. So, we're talking with Mr. Josh Waters. We've got one more bill that has made the scorecard. We've gone over the bills that are in support or that are positive. Now we're going to get to the one on the scorecard this week that is opposed by Conduit. It is SB 260, prohibiting PAC-to-PAC contributions by Senator Bart Hester. What can you tell us about this bill, Josh?
So this bill was filed around the same time a package of ethics bills were filed. I would argue this bill has nothing to do with ethics, and in fact is using ethics to say we want to silence free speech. So this bill would say a political action committee cannot give to another political action committee. And so what people may not know about political action committee, there's no such thing as dark money in PACs. Every contribution above $500 must be disclosed. It's publicly available. You can go see who gave. You can see their address. You can see their employer. You can see their occupation. It's a very transparent process. We need more transparency there. Let's go for that. But let's not try to stifle free speech in the political process by prohibiting, making it harder for PACs to be involved in the political process.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because in Arkansas, because of John Woods, and I want to emphasize that, because of John Woods and his so-called ethics law, the only way to have a significant voice in Arkansas is to mess around with this PAC system. Because businesses can no longer give $2,000 directly to a candidate. Businesses can only give, like your mom and pop business can only give to a PAC, and there's not a lot of mom and pop shops that even know of a PAC to give to. But so the big guys like Walmart and these big corporations, they've been using the PAC system forever. And so what they effectively did was say, okay, if you want to limit or if you want to compete, you're going to have to, in politics in Arkansas, you're going to have political action committees. And so now to come alongside that and say, you're not going to, when it is transparent, like you said, when you do see their address, their employer, their occupation, the amount of donations that they give, and then, transferring from PAC to PAC, I don't see how that's. I don't see that have. I agree with you, Josh. I don't see how that has anything to do with ethics.
Yeah, it's an open, transparent process. Let's keep transparency, but let's keep freedom. Let's let people do what they want to do with their money in this open and transparent process. And I would argue, Paul, that any efforts to stifle or silence political free speech under the name of ethics is itself unethical behavior.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff. Let's just hope that we get real ethics reform here. I think that's certainly is what we want. And like you said, there is all this talk about dark money. I have often found that dark money is only dark money based on who's defining what dark money is. And right now, I see. Here's the thing: if they go ahead and go through with this, they're actually making it harder, really, for everybody to participate in the political process. And so, anyway, we'll see what happens with this piece of legislation. Again, Bart Hester, SB 260. He had a piece of legislation on last week's scorecard that was supported and was good. And actually, I believe that was a rigorous debate, but that did, in fact, pass out of the Senate to deregulate what cities can do when it comes to telling a private property owner what they can do on their own property. So that was interesting. But now we have here a situation, like you said, Josh, political speech has got to be protected. And right now, the avenues of political speech in Arkansas are done using political action committees, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, so, this bill, again, was part of this idea of an ethics package, and that's somehow going to improve ethics. Couple things, nothing to do with ethics. We do need ethics reform. We need Medicaid disclosure. We need closing the lobbyist loophole. We need more resources for our ethics commission. And this bill also has nothing to do with dark money. Dark money is a whole different issue. This is public contributions that are in a transparent process. All the donations above 500 must be disclosed. It's publicly available. And so trying to stifle or shut down, free speech in the name of ethics is just, it's not right. It's not good for the political process.
Yeah, Medicaid disclosure, closing lobbyist loopholes, those are the two biggest things. Those are the two biggest things that need to be done with ethics reform. And it was attempted to be done 2 years ago, and it didn't happen. And those are the biggest things that we could do to reform ethics. Josh Waters, we really appreciate you being on the program, sir. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep. Have a good morning, Paul.
All righty, you too. We'll see you down at the Marble Palace. Hey, folks, that's where I'm headed here in just a little bit. We're going to be going down to Little Rock to go to the House Judiciary Committee, where State Representative Brant Smith will be running, I hope, his resolution once again to clarify gun rights. It was kind of some fireworks there last Thursday, and now I'm sure there's going to be even more fireworks because I understand Moms Demand Action will be there. But I also know there'll be some great folks from the Patriots Fact 746 and the Arkansas Liberty Coalition there as well. So we will see what happens. All it is clarifying what the law said for 5 years. It's already been said. We'll see what happens. I think there's enough Republicans on the committee that are going to vote for it because I think they know what the law says. And that's all this is clarifying as a lawmaker what the law already says. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.